Hey, how's it going? It's Steven here from understandingaudio.com, and today I'm going to be talking about snare drums. Now, when we're talking about snare drum processing, the go-tos are EQ, compression, and reverb. And people like to get really fancy by adding in snare samples and things like that, but very rarely do people talk about adding delay to a snare drum. And today I'm going to show you how to do just that. Now I'm back inside a mix of a song that I did for my friend Monsieur Alice, and this track has a pretty badass intro. So first let me mute what I did, the delay I added to the snare drum, and let me play this intro back for you. Alright, it's pretty cool, and those toms are definitely the star of the show at the start of this track. But I felt like my snare was falling a bit flat, and I wanted it to take up more space, but draw attention to the toms that are panned left and right. Now, the toms are not panned hard left and right, but they are a little bit out there. So rather than getting too fancy and adding in any extra percussive elements, I decided to add some delay to the snare drum. And this delay is on a send from my snares bus, which is here. I've got 3 snare drums, this snare sample, snare top, and snare bottom. So it makes sense for me to get them and bust them all out to this snares bus. Gives me much better control, and then I can send from this bus to any other effects that I need. So I've sent the snares out to this double delay send, and that goes to this aux up here. Don't worry too much about it being called double delay. And on this track, I've got a standard stock delay plugin. Just going to close this for now. And what this delay is doing is adding a 250 millisecond delay on the left, and at 125 BPM, an eighth note or quaver would be 240 milliseconds. This is 250, so it's a little bit longer than an eighth note. I've added a lot of feedback, 60%, and a low pass filter at 4K. On the right, I've added a delay of 500 milliseconds, which would be slightly longer than a quarter note or a crotchet, and that has less feedback. The low pass filter here is in and around 8K. The main idea is that one delay is longer than the other, and there's a little bit more feedback on one side than the other. More often than not, it makes sense to add the greater feedback to the shorter delay time. So first of all, here's what my snare sounds like without any delay added. Alright, I've got a couple of plugins coming after this delay, so I'm going to bypass them first and just demonstrate what this delay is doing on its own. Alright, it's a bit much hearing that snare drum just on repeat, echoing over and over again. Because in terms of the frequency spectrum, snare drums are quite dense. There's a lot going on. So if you're going to use an effect like this, it's definitely worth taming the sound of the delay so that it doesn't sound like a wash of snare drums or a wash of frequencies all the time. That can be really distracting. So I added an EQ in after the delay. And what that EQ is doing is taking off everything above 2K and rolling off everything below 240. That's to reduce the impact and presence of the snare drum delay. It makes it feel like it's further away, adds some variance, but keeps a really cool effect. So here's what the EQ is doing. Without it, back in. Without it, back in. Then finally, I added a lo-fi plugin for some sizzle. All that's going on here is some distortion and some bit crushing. Taking it out. Back in. And what that's going to do is bring your attention to the sides and not only emphasize the snare drum, but also the tom hits. And remember that these are all programmed drums, so it helps to have some variance and life to them. The snare delay helps to fill in those gaps. So here are all the drums together without the delay added. And then with the delay in. Back out. Back in. Now it might seem subtle to you, so you can add as much or as little of this effect if you want. I have it at the send level at minus 10.7 here, and it's actually automated, so if I wanted to adjust this as an example, I would just adjust this fader up here. So I'll play it back for you now with some more added emphasis to the delay. Could keep it like that if you wanted a dramatic effect without it. Back in. So you'll notice at this point, the delay disappears. And that's because once the toms go out, I want the whole mix to have a little bit more breathing room. So I took the delay off the snare at this point. Now there's very little use in listening to this in solo, so let's listen to this in the context of the mix. Here it is first with the delay out. Alright, now with the delay effect on the snare added. And once again, if I really wanted to make that pronounced, I could bring this fader up. Let's play that again. Whatever way you want to play it, that effect is there for you. The main thing for me was creating some variance between this intro section and then when the toms disappear and everything becomes a bit more open. I use that effect to create more of a variance between the two sections. In my case, I use it quite subtly, but you might use it for more dramatic effect. This is a really useful technique for filling in gaps, adding life, creating variance between sections, like I showed you, adding emphasis to certain instruments, like here I wanted to actually emphasize the toms a little bit more. It's completely versatile and you can use it as you see fit. And I borrowed / stole this idea from Let's Dance by David Bowie. Bob Clearmountain's use of delay on Nile Rodgers' guitar part is absolutely iconic, and there's no reason why you can't adapt an idea like that to your needs. Oh, and this delay trick is also used on the snare drum in the pre-chorus. And that leads me to a very important point. By listening to the greats and by listening to incredible music, you develop and refine your taste over time. Not only do you establish what you think is good music, but you subconsciously define your own style as a producer and an engineer. And when it comes to mixing, producing music, having a fan base, having clients, people want to hear your taste. And I've got something that's going to help you with that straight away today. It's my free guide, the one hack that guarantees a unique, pro-sounding mix. Now, as an example, I mentioned Let's Dance by David Bowie and this iconic delay trick in this guide, among many, many others, as part of song styles and techniques that have helped me define my own taste over the years. And I want you to be able to define, refine, and develop your style as well. So all you have to do to get the guide is go to getpromixes.com and download it for free straight away, right now, today. Now before I go, leave a comment down below and let me know if you've ever used delays on snare drums before. How did it work out for you? Is there anything I'm missing? Show me something you've done. I'd love to hear it. I'd love to see it. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Oh, and one last thing, there's way more over at understandingaudio.com for you to check out, watch, listen to, and read whenever you get a free moment. Alright, that's it for me. I'll be back with a new video very soon, and in the meantime, keep having fun making great music.